Newsfirst, face-to-face with Jamal Ratnayaka.
A very good evening and welcome to yet another edition of Face to Face, coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo this Wednesday night. Tonight, my guest in the studio is President's Counsel Farman Cassim of the leading ruling opposition, or rather the opposition of Sri Lanka, the Samagi Janabalavekya. A very good evening to you, Mr. Cassim, and welcome back to the show.
Good evening, Jamal, and thank you for the introduction. Unfortunately, we are not ruling. If we were ruling, the country would not be in this state.
I apologize, certainly. But we will talk about elections. We will talk about the legal situation here in Sri Lanka. But before anything else, I want to get tonight's ball rolling, Mr. Cassim, speaking about something that Sri Lankans are pondering on day in and day out, and that is what sort of election will be held this year. We know that there has been statements made regarding a presidential election, and according to the constitution, it is the presidential election which should be held this year. Can you just brief us on the background which is mentioned in the constitution regarding the presidential election? Should it be held? Can it be postponed? What will transpire if it is postponed? Let's just clarify that situation first.
So first of all, in terms of article, the chapter of 30 and onwards regarding the presidential election, the president's term is for 5 years, and so that is non-negotiable, or is a substantive clause in the constitution.
Okay.
So by November 18th of November, there has to be a new president sitting in terms of the constitution. The constitution also states that the presidential election should be held 1 month prior to November 18th, that is 1 month prior to the date that the current president exists, or 2 months before. So the date has to be between September 17th and October 17th. The presidential election has to be held. There is no provision to postpone it, because the constitution says the term is 5 years. So say on most unthoughtful, or the reason it says it's postponed for some reason or the other, there won't be a sitting president in this country.
I see.
So say there is some emergency, some exurgency or something like that takes place in the country, like probably a major disaster, and you can't have an election for some reason or the other, then there won't be a president post November 18. So unless and otherwise there is some sort of emergency like that, which will be over for a period of month, which I don't think we can even think of unless there is a national and an international crisis that there is going to be a postponement of the election. So whatever you do, you cannot postpone the election. These are just stories put out by Ranil Wickremesinghe and his cohort of supporters who are very shallow in their thinking. There will never be a postponement of the presidential election. The question you asked was what elections can be held this year. Well, the presidential election has to be held this year, and of course in terms of our constitution, the president after 2.5 years can dissolve parliament any time. So our guess is good as his, that if he decides to dissolve parliament, we are ready for a parliament election also.
Right. So, speaking on the presidential election, there have been rumors swirling regarding a possible abolition of the presidential capacity, or the presidency, the executive presidency in Sri Lanka. But this is something that has been brought up time and time again, and it seems almost farcical, because we know that it's a presidential election year, and all of a sudden the attention of the ruling authorities have been directed to the abolition of the executive presidency. And many in the opposition, including the SJB, are saying that this is yet another trick or an attempt to remain in power. What is your opinion on that, Mr. Cassim?
So it's like this, we as a party, our position is that the executive presidency should go, but not with the present electoral system. In fact, we are the party that walks the talk in every matter concerned. We are the party that 2 years ago tabled a bill to abolish the executive presidency. Now that was 2 years ago.
Right.
So that bill is before Parliament. So if the president or whoever it is wants to expedite the issue, that bill is in Parliament, tendered by our General Secretary Rajit Bandhavandara as the then 21st Amendment. The attempt now by Ranil Wickremesinghe is to abolish the executive presidency for his survival. We will not allow that. we will, because it has to be done by a president having the mandate.
Right.
And people have to buy in. Gotabaya Rajapaksa had the mandate. Every other president except D.B. Tunga had the mandate. So you have to have the people's mandate to do whatever it is. Ranil Wickremesinghe is just a caretaker president, appointed by circumstances. So he cannot decide, or his government cannot decide to abolish the presidency. We won't allow that. The opposition is definite on that point. We will not allow it. We will go for a presidential election, and then we will decide, with discussion with all the parties and discussion with all stakeholders, on how the electoral system should be reformed, and then abolish the presidency. Because in this electoral reform, I must say that very weak government, unless there is some real trend towards the party winning the presidency, generally it's very weak governments that are elected, and it's the presidency that binds the parliament together, which is not a good sign for democracy if there is no executive presidency. So we have to reform the electoral process. Once that is done, we can then abolish the presidency.
So right, talking about the three branches of the state, we'll take the executive, the legislation and the judiciary. Through the executive presidency and the 1978 constitution, there were almost unlimited power vested with the president, and again there have been calls time and time again to devolve this power and give equal authority to the legislature and the executive and also the judiciary to protect the independence of the judiciary. So what sort of steps will the Samvijana Balawegaya take in order to mitigate this situation and to ensure that all three branches of the state have equal authority?
So we have tendered our proposals. We have been talking about this. In fact, what we have suggested is that the Constitutional Council that is now in existence may be made even stronger. Ranil Wickremesinghe, the funny part is that he advocated the Constitutional Council during the Yahapalani time in the 19th Amendment, and now he's going against the grain, and now has decided that the executive decided that the Constitutional Council is just a rubber stamp, which is not so. So we will strengthen the Constitutional Council. We will also to enhance the independence of judiciary. We propose that judges of the superior courts, when they retire, that there is a cooling off period of getting appointments. That cooling off period is 5 years in India.
Right.
So that would be ideal, 5 years or 3 years. But we also propose that they are given large financial benefits when they retire, the judges, so that there won't be dependency on appointments as such.
Right.
So a cooling off period of probably 3 years or 5 years, plus a very material and very significant payment package when they retire.
Right.
So that is a must, I think. Otherwise, we will never have judicial independence to the extent of probably the most developed countries. 80 to probably 80% of our judges are very good. I mean, most of the judges are very good. But sometimes we all know that when there are benefits offered, everybody has a price. I mean, that's natural, that's human. So we must try to reduce that price of a person selling his soul, whether it be a judge or a civil servant or any government officer for that matter, that they are financially independent, more so judges, because once the judicial process the faith is lost, the whole fabric of society will fail. So judges have to be looked after well by the state, judges have to have benefits, so that's what we propose to enhance the independence of judiciary.
Right, okay. So talking about legislation that has been passed and are currently being debated in Parliament, one particular piece of legislation I'm speaking about is the Online Safety Act that was passed. It has now come to light that some of the recommendations forwarded by the Supreme Court had not been entered into the final version of that act, and around 47 out of the 57 sections seem to be inconsistent with the Constitution or other laws in the country. So, be that as it may, why does the government seem to be passing laws in haste?
So obviously he is passing laws. This is based on Ranil Wickremesinghe, because he is trying to quell dissent, quell uprising, and thinks that he can extend his term and then win an election in this way, which is not going to happen. With regards to the online safety bill, like the counter-terrorism bill, see, my problem with all this is, and my personal opinion is that it's the application of this act, or both the acts. The online safety bill, there is a commission of 5 appointed by the president. So, for example, I'll give, and with regards to even the counter-terrorism, it's the same thing. It's the minister of defense that signs the DO. I'll give you the case of Hijaz Hizbullah. Now we all know what a farcical arrest that was, and the defense secretary, I mean, should resign actually. I mean, after he signed this DO, I mean, there is no evidence whatsoever. So it is on his recommendation and his belief of guilt that he signed the DO. So actually, in any other country, he would be found fault and he would have resigned the next day once it has come to light that the witness is lying over and over again and that kind of thing. So it is the application. Are the laws applied to everybody equally? This is the application. Is the application on your ethnic basis, or on the basis of the party that you support?
Yes.
So in Sri Lanka, our terrorism laws depend, or the online safety bill is not tested yet, but it will happen. It will depend on what ethnic community you come from, what religion you are in, what political party you support, and which kind of belief that you have.
Yes.
So the application will be based on that. That is why we say that there has to be judicial intervention, there has to be judicial oversight, and a proper, not just an oversight, but a judicial intervention is a necessity for a thing like the online safety bill or the counterterrorism bill to be actually meaningful. Otherwise, you are just applying these bills into operation, and then you are creating more hatred towards society, and the country will go nowhere.
So talking about passing laws, we know that post-enactment judicial reviews are a thing that exists in the world, but it does not seem to exist in the laws of Sri Lanka. There doesn't seem to be a post-enactment analysis of any law or legislation that is passed in the land. So how vital is it to incorporate such, how may I put it, to incorporate such a section or to incorporate such a law in the country to ensure that whatever law is passed is in the best interest of the general public and also the nation?
So yeah, post-enactment legislation is not permitted in Sri Lanka or not allowed. We don't have that process. So the process is there is a bill presented, then anyone challenging it can go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will give its determinations as to what needs to be done. There is some sort of honorability in when you act, but it seems that Sri Lankan Parliament now has lost that sense of honorability or honor or respect or whatever you call it, morals, ethics, that once the determination is given at committee stage, then you have to amend the bill according to the determination.
Right.
That doesn't seem to be happening. So therefore, I think now the time has arrived where we have to force our hand and enact laws for post enactment legislation.
Judicial review. Okay, so staying on the same topic of enacting and enforcing laws that are in the interest of national interest and also the general public, there seems to be very little examples when it comes to legislation formed based on research findings and expert knowledge. Instead, laws and legislations are passed based on party politics or the majoritarian or the majority of the interest that a certain ruling party holds. How vital, once again, is it to consult legal expert, conduct analysis and also to conduct research and based on the research findings to enact or revise existing laws to make them more effective?
That is brilliant. You see, everything in Sri Lanka is done with personal agendas and personal beliefs. I believe something, so I want, if I have the power, I believe something, so I want it done. Even the environmental authority, the wildlife authority and all those authorities under the sun in Sri Lanka, the director generals or the officers will come up with their views.
Yes.
If you ask them where is the research or the analysis on what basis are you saying that the elephants are crossing this road or this windmill is going to affect this the ecosystem, yes. They would not come up with any analysis or any solution.
Right.
So same thing with what you're saying with regards to the legislation. I mean, we are not an analytical based, science-based country for some reason. We just love to come with, I mean, and we know everything. As Sri Lankans, our trait is we know everything. We can give views on anything and everything except do our job. We will give views on anything except do our job which we are supposed to do. So in that context, it is a must that there is proper research done, proper review done. Then once a law is passed, see whether it is working. If it is not working, you amend it. So there has to be a process. With regards to laws, I think the Justice Ministry has to lay down a process of how do you amend laws. which branch of laws need to be amended. There should be permanent standing committees for each branch of the law that amends laws, goes through the law, see whether the law is working. See, we are still following the 1890 Civil Procedure Code, where England has forgotten about it and changed it, and they have a thing called Civil Procedure Rules. We are still following
archaic
laws, and we don't have a sitting committee to go through that. We don't have a sitting committee to go through our company law and our arbitration law. Our arbitration law is 1995. Arbitration has moved on in these 30 years, leaps and bounds. Nowadays, arbitrations in Shanghai finish within 2 weeks. We are still, our arbitrations are going on for 3-4 years. So where are we heading as a country? We don't, that's why I say, just take the Justice Ministry. We have to have standing committees and permanent committees consisting of 5 or 10 people or something who looks into laws every 3 months and says, you know, this law needs to be changed. So you have to have a committee for commercial law.
Yes.
You have to have a committee for criminal law. You have to have a committee for the constitution.
Right.
Then for each branch, criminal law, like that, you have to have about 20 different committees, and then let them come up with new laws, review the laws, and, you know, with research.
Right.
And it's not rocket science, you know. Other countries are having these laws. You see how, I mean, they are all advanced. You just have to copy. You don't copy and paste, but you copy those laws and see whether you can fit them into Sri Lanka, and in our Sri Lankan context, how we can tweak around with it. You don't have to be a Einstein to do that. Yeah, it's easy, but it's just the will and the fact that you don't want to, learn from somebody. So we need to get our petty differences out of our thinking system and appoint these committees and let them do their job.
Right. So coming back to enacting new laws, particularly the Online Safety Act, I was watching the news earlier today, and in Parliament, I think a member of Parliament from the ruling party says that many countries, many developed countries like the UK, Germany, and even the United States have enacted laws to ensure the safety of social media, to ensure safety of the citizens when they are using and perusing social media. And he even quoted one of the incidents that happened in the United States where Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Meta, was made to apologize to parents of children who had lost their lives or who were affected detrimentally by the ill effects of social media, and that is why they have stressed on the need to implement an Online Safety Act. But do you believe that this is being done in the genuine interest of safeguarding the masses or to gain political mileage?
So I'll give you the example in what you told is that the Mark Zuckerberg came, that's a congressional hearing with congressmen. Just imagine Mark Zuckerberg coming and being interviewed by our parliamentarians, 5 or 10, I mean, I can't think of more than about 10 or 15 that will be able to interview Mark Zuckerberg and tell him, look, see what you have done is wrong and we have done the research and, now apologize. They will behave like, I don't have to say it. I mean, what's going to happen? So this is the difference. So you can't, that's not the template. So what Sri Lanka needs is whatever law we pass, you need judicial intervention.
Right.
If you want an arrest warrant, you have to go to a judge. The person who's arrested needs to come before a judge on the very first day and say, look here, they don't have proof.
Right.
The judge should be able to give bail on the first day. The judge should be able to look and ask the prosecuting officer, look here, what's the proof you have for taking this guy into custody or the suspect into custody. If they don't have that, the judge should be able to grant bail immediately. Those safeguards are not there in these acts. My concern is you can bring whatever draconian act, but give the judge, give the magistrate. If you don't want to give the magistrate, the High Court judge or a Court of Appeal judge, if it's a terrorism act, you can go to Court of Appeal or Supreme Court, but give a judicial officer the power to decide and to grant bail if they have to. Otherwise, what suffering the people are going through? Look at Hijaz Ispola, 2 years in prison for doing what? Just because somebody didn't like him. The same, and he's only one. Now that is one highlighted case, but there are thousands like that, and their lives are finished. And what hatred they have towards society. Yes. Now, the Mudaligi, what's the boy's name? Vasanta Mudaligi. He may be a nuisance to all of us, but he doesn't deserve to be charged under the PTA. Now what bunkum is this? I mean, there is no. I mean, it is beyond anyone's doubt that these laws have been, misinterpreted, misused. And the state has been crushing people's spirit with this kind of laws.
Right. So talking about arrests especially, there has again been a conversation about the overcrowding of prisons. People being arrested and also imprisoned for minor infractions, and mainly sometimes being unable to pay off a bail, they are sent back into prison. And the case of unlawful arrests also comes to light. So what sort of a plan does the Samakya Janapala Vegaya have, should it come to power, to ensure that, one, overcrowding of prisons is reduced, and to ensure that those who are found guilty of minor infractions are able to step out into the world once they are either they pay off their dues or they are rehabilitated?
Again, it boils down to this now. For example, it all comes down to training. Our laws say that remand is the exception, bail is the norm.
Right.
But you go before any magistrate today, the remand will be the norm and bail will be the exception. Like a school principal, our magistrates, most of them, will remand a guy for 2 weeks or for 1 week.
Okay.
I mean, where in the world do you get this kind of, unless he is going to run away, unless and there is public outcry, unless the magistrate believes or is satisfied that he is going to create a crime again, right? Or if he is going to interfere with witnesses. If you knock a person down, you're remanded for 2 weeks. If you go drunk driving, you're remanded. I mean, it doesn't fall under the exceptions to be remanded.
Right.
So you need training. That's why I say Justice Ministry has to be run by a person who is actually genuinely involved in and knows the whole process of the law, gamut of the law. And the secretary of the, I mean, it's a minister who just lays policy, but it's actually the secretary who should be running the show. The secretary should know what's happening, and you need to have these committees. If you have a committee of criminal lawyers, a criminal judge, a magistrate, and criminal lawyers from the private bar, official bar, and a couple of retired judges for criminal law, then they would come up with these proposals and say, well, I mean, what the judges in these courts are doing these things, this is the number of arrests, this is the number of remand, then they will know, and then they can formulate laws and then train the judges. So everything boils down to this scientific research based, and then having the mechanism to change and train the judges and the lawyers and the process and amend the laws if necessary.
Right.
So it all depends on how organized you are at the ministry level.
Right. So coming back to one of the reasons Sri Lanka is where we are right now, fraud and corruption, that is been something that's been thrown around when it comes to election season. Government's successive candidates have put forward the need to eradicate fraud and corruption in Sri Lanka to garner the votes of the people, but when they eventually do come into power, that is conveniently swept under the carpet. But when Sri Lanka entered the extended fund facility with the IMF, I think Sri Lanka was the first country in our region where the governance diagnostic tool was used to expose corruption vulnerabilities and weaknesses in governance in Sri Lanka. What sort of laws do you believe should be brought in terms of anti-corruption to create a system that is so robust that even the most corrupt cannot engage in corruption purely because the laws are so stringent on such vices?
So we need to again review our laws and see how practical they are and how advanced, or whether we are not advanced with regards to money laundering and things like that. Also, we must be careful not to put in laws just the whims and fancies of the Western force. See, for example, Switzerland developed because of their banks.
Right.
Now, what are in their banks? Right? Your guess is good as mine. Dubai developed because of the all kinds of money that is coming in. Black money does not mean it's illegal money. Black money means somebody has money which he cannot declare for certain purposes and they bring it and come. See, we pass laws that go against us actually. Our money laundering laws, I have to explain some money coming in, if I have $10,000, I have to explain. And I have to know your customer and NYCs. So who's going to bring money into Sri Lanka? So those laws have been passed, but laws to curb corruption are stagnant. So our contention is that you must get rid of these laws, and we have to become Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong, Seychelles, or wherever it is, and attract all the monies that we need to repeal those money laundering laws and stuff like that, and the laws like that prevent people from bringing in money or foreign currency into Sri Lanka.
Right.
And we should make stringent laws where corruption is concerned with a very important, we should have a separate public prosecutor's office, separate from the Attorney General's, because the Attorney General is the lawyer for the state. He is the advisor for the state.
Yes.
I would even propose that the Attorney General be a part of the cabinet and advise the state, and a public prosecutor's office, separate public prosecutor's office that is in charge of prosecutions.
Right.
That would, I think, separate the two and let the public prosecutor's office do the prosecutions. again, it comes down to leadership at the end of the day. If we all know the example of Lee Kuan Yew. When he came into power, his good friends from Oxford and 2 of his friends went on a tour.
Yes.
And then after 6 months after he came into power, as they landed at the airport, they were asked, how did you go on this tour? They said the friends sponsored up. They were arrested.
Yes.
So you have to have proper leaders who can take those decisions and say, he may be my friend or buddy. But if you are corrupt, if you are taken a graft, that's the end of the story. So we have a long way to go. Corruption is so deep-rooted in our country, whether we like it or not, we know it. But we have hope, because Sajid Premadasa, nobody can point a finger at him and say, looking at all the leaders today, whether it be X, Y, Z, look at all the leaders of parties, politicians, no one will turn around and say Sajid Premadasa is corrupt. I have never heard that, to be very honest. I'm the legal secretary of the party, but that's a different matter. Nobody will say Sajid Premadasa is corrupt or Sajid Premadasa encourages corruption. We all know if he had done something wrong and we go to him, he'll say, Farman, sorry, don't talk to me. He's a character like that.
Right.
So
he's willing to take the hard decisions.
Take the hard decisions, and we envisage good things for the country.
Right. So my guest this evening was President's Counsel Farman Cassim, Legal Secretary of the Opposition, Samagi Janapala. We spoke of many things, mainly concerning the legal aspect of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, Mr. Cassim, for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
And that's the way it was on Face to Face this evening. Take care and good night.